Seattle does this thing sometimes in early fall where it pretends to be generous. The rain pulls back just enough for you to forget how gray the world usually feels, and the light off the water turns silver and gold in the same breath. That night was one of those nights, clear sky, waterfront breeze, and the kind of glow that makes everything look a little more cinematic than it really is. The agency booked out a converted aircraft hangar on Pier 62 for their celebration. A wide, echoing space decked with Art Deco chandeliers and velvet partitions to make it feel less like a warehouse and more like the kind of place where people say words like activation and brand resonance without irony. The walls were glass, floor to ceiling, with the water on one side and the city skyline bleeding through on the other. It was expensive, sleek, disposable, just like most of what passes for meaning in Emily's world these days. She was in emerald silk. Not green, not teal, emerald. I only know that because I looked up the exact name of the shade online after she bought the dress. She never wore it for me, only for professional events. Backless, barely there straps, the kind of dress that doesn't need to work hard to get attention. I noticed the glances it drew the second we stepped into the room. Younger guys in tailored suits, the older execs pretending not to look. She walked between them like she'd been born in that exact lighting, with that exact breeze stirring her hair. I guess I used to be proud of that. Now it felt like watching someone perform a role I didn't audition for. But none of that was the beginning. Not really. The real beginning was earlier that morning, in our kitchen, sunlight pooling across the tile, her coffee steaming next to the phone she never lets out of her hand anymore. I told her plainly, "If you wear that dress to meet with Derek, you might as well mentally take off your ring and my last name with it." She looked up from her phone, gave me a slow smile. That smile, the one that says you poor, insecure man, still playing chess while I'm rewriting the rules. Then she took a sip of her coffee and said nothing. Didn't deny it. Didn't fight. Just smiled. I don't know what I expected. Maybe an argument. Maybe even guilt. What I got instead was dismissal. That cut deeper. So I let it drop. Outwardly. We rode to the reception together in silence. Her scrolling, me driving. She complimented my tie before we walked in. I mumbled a thanks, eyes on the valet line. That was it. Now, at the event, I was floating somewhere near the bar with a whiskey in hand, watching her work the room. Her voice rose and fell in just the right way, warm when she needed to be, sharp when it served her. Every movement was measured, intentional, strategic. Emily could command a room without ever raising her voice. She was fluent in social power, and I'd watched her use it 1,000 times. But something about tonight felt different. Like she was pushing the performance even harder, just daring someone to question it. And then it happened. She was digging through her clutch for something, probably lip gloss, when a small envelope slipped out and landed on the floor near her heel. She didn't notice, but I did. I stepped forward, stooped down casually, and picked it up before she could. Cream cardstock, gold foil, Alder and Pine Hotel, exclusive couples retreat. I flipped it open. Inside were printed vouchers, couples package, 2 breakfasts, couples spa, deluxe suite, late checkout. Dates listed mid-October. Same weekend as her team-building offsite in Spokane. The itinerary was thorough. Too thorough. My eyes moved to her phone, which she just pulled out to tap through a message. The hotel's digital key screen was still open in her recents. Room 521. D.W. as the check-in name. I didn't say anything, just held the envelope in my hand. She noticed. "Oh, that's for clients," she said lightly, like I just found a leftover receipt. "We book out packages like that all the time for new partners. It's nothing." Nothing. Before I could ask, she continued, her tone slipping seamlessly from offhand to slightly defensive, like she'd rehearsed the pivot. "I know what this looks like, Jake. But seriously, it's work. You always jump to conclusions." She reached for the envelope. I didn't hand it over right away. 2 breakfasts, I said. She laughed, but there was a beat too much delay. "You think I'm taking a client to breakfast in bed now?" She was smiling, but her fingers were tighter around the clutch. Then came the real move. You know, she said, shifting her weight and lowering her voice just enough to make it private. This constant surveillance thing you've been doing lately is getting exhausting. My jaw tightened. I said nothing. I mean, come on, she went on. Do you hear yourself? You're upset because I have a hotel envelope in my purse? For work? The emphasis on work was so pointed I could have hung my coat on it. It's controlling, Jake. You're suffocating me with all this suspicion. Honestly, it makes me not even want to tell you things anymore. There it was. The redirect. The guilt grenade. Make me the problem. Again. She took the envelope from my hand. Smoothly. Gracefully. Like it had never been a question. Then she tucked it back into her bag with a smile that was meant to reassure the people around us. Not me. I scanned the room. No one was watching, really. Just background noise. Glasses clinking. A jazz trio murmuring in the corner. Waiters drifting past with oysters and microgreens on crackers. But in that moment, it felt like I was the only one seeing what this really was. She leaned in, kissed me lightly on the cheek, and said, "Please try to have fun tonight. Okay?" Then she drifted back into the crowd, toward Derek, who was already waiting by the sponsor signage, glass in hand, smile locked and ready. I watched them for a minute, the way his hand brushed hers in greeting, the familiarity, the slight lean in as he spoke into her ear. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to be intentional. I didn't react, didn't flinch. Outwardly, I was composed, calm, maybe even detached. But inside, I was recording it all. The time, the name on the key, the dates, the smell of her perfume, the exact moment her expression changed when I picked up that envelope. The phrase, "You're suffocating me." I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid, and I was done being handled. I used to believe that trust unraveled all at once, like some dramatic snap of a rope, loud and sudden. But the truth is, it frays, quietly, one thread at a time. The first thing to go was the shared calendar. Back in June, I opened the app to check our plans for a weekend in Bellingham, something we talked about doing before summer ended, and the calendar was just blank. No notes, no meetings, no dinner reservations, nothing. I thought it was a sync issue at first. I even restarted my phone. But when I asked her, Emily said something vague about cleaning it up, because it was too cluttered. That was her phrase, too cluttered. We'd used that calendar for years, birthdays, bills, trips, dentist appointments. She used to color code everything. But now, apparently, it was unnecessary clutter. I didn't push, but I remembered. Then came the location sharing. She disabled it around the same time, said it was draining her battery. Which made sense, except she had a brand new phone. And when I offered to help her adjust the settings instead, she laughed and said, "God, Jake, do you need to track me like a lost package?" I dropped it, but not really. The next week, I went to find a photo we'd taken at a friend's barbecue. The one where we stood under those paper lanterns, both kind of sunburnt but happy. I scrolled through our shared photo album, but it was gone. Not just that photo. Everything since May. When I asked, she acted surprised. "Huh, that's weird. Must be a sync issue again." That was becoming her thing, blaming syncs, clouds, or software for anything that disappeared. But none of that compared to how she started treating her phone like it held nuclear codes. It never left her side. Not once. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen while we watched movies or cooked. Now it followed her to the bathroom, the laundry room, even the backyard. Always face down. Always on silent. I noticed the lock screen had changed, too. New Face ID. I asked if she updated it and she shrugged. "It's faster now." Faster, but not for me. Then there were the clothes. Expensive ones. Dresses, heels, handbags, all for work. That was the explanation. Work events, pitch meetings, leadership offsites. But she never wore them around me. The tags were gone, the receipts buried, and when I asked where she bought them, she'd rattle off a name I didn't recognize and pivot to something else. Like how I never notice when she wears new things anyway. "I got this months ago, babe," she'd say, spinning in front of the mirror. You just don't pay attention. I started paying attention. The weekends changed next. Emily's agency started scheduling a lot of off-sites. Always Friday through Monday. Always somewhere just far enough that it made sense for her to be gone overnight. Spokane, Olympia, sometimes Portland. She said they were full of meetings, bonding exercises, long hours. But when I checked the agency's Instagram or LinkedIn, there was nothing. No photos, no team tags, no mentions of retreats or strategy summits. Just silence. The smart home system helped fill in the blanks. Our router logs showed her devices connecting at random hours on weekends she was supposed to be out of town. The smart lock showed entries under her code, sometimes as late as 2:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I once asked if she came home briefly during a trip, and she tilted her head and said, "Why would I do that?" I didn't answer. I just nodded. She never knew I had access to the back end of the lock system. She never asked. Then there was the neighbor's camera. It was pure chance. Our across-the-street neighbor, Marla, texted me one morning asking if we'd seen any strange cars on our block lately. There had been a few thefts, and she'd installed a motion-sensitive camera facing the street. I asked her to send me the footage, curious if it captured anything from our side of the yard. It did. It captured Emily being dropped off at 5:46 a.m. on a Monday morning by a dark silver SUV. She wasn't carrying luggage, just a small overnight bag. She kissed the driver on the cheek, quick, casual, and walked up the driveway like nothing was out of place. That was the morning she told me she'd be flying back from Spokane around noon. I saved the clip and said nothing. The electric car helped next. We don't have a gas-powered car anymore. Just the little EV she insisted we buy 2 years ago. It syncs to my account, which means I can see when and where it's charged. I looked up the history on a hunch. She'd been stopping regularly at a charging station in Ballard. Odd, considering her route from work would never take her there. But even stranger was the pattern. The same spot, every other Thursday, between 9 o'clock and 10 p.m. And it was 2 blocks from Derek's house. Yes, that Derek. Her colleague. The one who understood her work stress. The one she said had been through a rough divorce and was just a good guy trying to be decent. The one she used to talk about like a charity project. Now she didn't mention him at all. That's when I started looking at the photos. She sent me one in August, standing near a conference sign, smiling. Said it was from Tampa. I noticed something strange about the sky. Too overcast for Florida. I checked the metadata out of habit. It said Olympia. I asked her about it and she said, "Oh, I reused an old photo. Didn't have anything recent that looked good." Then she changed the subject. The computer didn't lie, though. On our shared desktop, buried deep in the cache of a user account she assumed I never used, I found traces, small, almost accidental signs. Files named innocuous things like proposal_final3 and map_draft. But when I opened them, they were route plans, travel logs. Some led to boutique hotels in Bainbridge. One matched the exact time of a reservation I found on her corporate card. 2 guests, Queen Suite, late checkout. The billing note, double occupancy. Every time I tried to confront her, she made it about me. "You've been cold lately. You're just looking for things to be mad about." "I'm drowning in work, Jake. This isn't about some mystery man. It's about you checking out months ago." And honestly, I almost bought it. I almost believed I was the problem. That maybe I had become distant. Maybe I had let the routines flatten us, dulled the spark. Maybe I was imagining it all. But facts are facts. Metadata doesn't lie. Door logs don't lie. GPS logs, EV charging data, hotel reservations, they don't lie. What changed was her. And as the picture got clearer, so did her version of the story. She was laying down a narrative, brick by brick, hoping I'd walk into it blind. I could hear it forming already. Jake stopped being present. Jake was jealous, possessive. Jake didn't support her career. It was subtle, intentional. If this was a setup, I was the villain in her version. That's how she was going to explain it, if it ever came to light. She wasn't cheating. She was coping, working, trying. And I was the one who cooled off. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was methodical. And soon I would be certain. I didn't want to be right. That's the hardest part to explain to anyone who's never lived through this. People think you go hunting for proof because you're angry, because you want to catch them. But that's not it. You search because some stubborn part of you still hopes you're wrong. That somehow there's a better explanation for all of it. That you're just tired. Or bitter. Or paranoid. That if you look close enough, the pieces will fall back into place. But when I looked close, they didn't. They shattered. It started with her earbuds. Emily had a pair of wireless earbuds she used constantly, calls, podcasts, meetings. They went everywhere with her. And she had a habit of leaving the case on the kitchen counter when she got distracted. So one Friday afternoon, I took the opportunity. Slid a tiny Bluetooth tracker under the insert. Thin enough that it wouldn't trigger the lid from closing. Silent enough to never alert her phone. That night, she told me she had a client dinner downtown. I nodded. Said nothing. She left the house just after 6, dressed sharply but not overly done. In that strategic kind of way. Pencil skirt, white silk blouse, light blazer. Polished but effortless. 15 minutes after she left, I checked the tracker. She wasn't downtown. She was headed toward Capitol Hill. I grabbed my keys. I didn't follow directly. I'd already memorized the device's broadcast intervals and knew she was stationary by 6:38. I parked 2 blocks down from the location. Walked the rest of the way. It was an industrial-style building, a retrofitted loft complex just off Pike Street, tucked behind a gallery and a plant store. Warm yellow windows framed with black steel, 3 stories up. Unit 3B. I didn't need to guess. Her digital key history from that glimpse back at the reception had listed a 3B not tied to a hotel. It hadn't meant anything at the time. Now it did. The unit had a panoramic window. Not fully open, but large enough to reveal a living space. Mid-century furniture. Exposed brick. Dim lighting. Records playing. And there they were. Emily. And Derek. She was on the couch beside him. Legs tucked under her. Leaning back into the cushions like she lived there. He sat close. Very close. Their bodies angled toward each other. But not stiff. Relaxed. Familiar. No laptops. No work bags. No visible dinner setup. No plates. No wine glasses. Just 2 people sinking into the kind of evening that only feels natural when it's been repeated. And then she laughed. Threw her head back. That laugh. The one I hadn't heard in months. Not with me. Not anywhere. He brushed her knee with the back of his hand. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. Then, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, she kissed him. Not a quick peck. Not a guilty glance around first. It was slow. Sure. Like they'd done it 100 times before. His hand slipped behind her neck, pulling her in gently. She leaned forward. Pressed into him. The kind of kiss that exists in silence because it doesn't need conversation. I didn't look away. Not immediately. I forced myself to watch long enough to be sure. Then I turned around. Walked back to the car. Shut the door quietly. Sat there with my hands on the wheel and the streetlights casting pale bars across the dash. The silence was enormous. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel surprised. What I felt more than anything was release. Like the tension I'd been carrying in my jaw and shoulders and stomach for months finally had a shape. A name. A location. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was fact. I opened the tracking app one more time to confirm the signal. Still there. Still 3B. I stayed parked for a while. Engine off, windows cracked just enough to hear the Friday night buzz of the city rising. It was comforting in a strange way. Cars honking. A couple laughing as they passed by. The far-off thud of bass from a rooftop party. The world was still turning. Indifferent and alive. Like nothing had shifted. But everything had. At 8:22 p.m. her signal moved. She left the building. Alone. I waited another 10 minutes. Then stepped out of the car and walked the sidewalk again. Not toward her. Not toward them. But toward the nearby alley, where the trash bins were lined up in clusters. I found the one marked 3B. Each unit had labeled containers. Inside, near the top, was a familiar takeout bag. Thai food. From a spot in Fremont we used to order from religiously. I saw the receipt. 2 entrees. 2 drinks. Timestamped 5:47 p.m. So much for dinner downtown. On the walk back to the car, I thought about the things she might say if I ever confronted her. It was just one time. We only talked. I didn't want it to happen. But I'd seen enough body language to know better. People don't touch like that when they're conflicted. They don't move in rhythm unless the rhythm has been practiced. She didn't hesitate with him. She didn't decide to do anything that night. She just continued what had already started. I started the engine, pulled out onto the street slowly, calmly. On the drive home, I passed our favorite Italian place, the one we hadn't been to since spring. I remembered her saying it was too carb-heavy now, that it made her feel sluggish. She changed her diet around that time, started intermittent fasting. Green juice in the mornings. No pasta, no sugar. But I remembered the box in the trash. Mango sticky rice. She used to love that. I think she just stopped eating those things with me. When I got home, the house was dark. I didn't turn on the lights, just sat in the living room for a while. Quiet. Still. At 9:46, she texted. Dinner ran long. Heading home soon. Love you. I stared at the message. Not client dinner. Not work ran late. Just dinner. I didn't respond. When she walked through the door 20 minutes later, she looked tired. Or she pretended to. Set her purse down. Kicked off her heels, sighed. Long night, she said. I just nodded from the couch. Didn't look up from my phone. She kissed the top of my head like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just returned from someone else's arms. I'm gonna shower, she said. I smell like pad thai. And then she laughed. Laughed. Like it was just a harmless detail. Just a scent. Just a normal Friday. I waited until I heard the water running before I opened my notes app. I typed. Capitol Hill, 6:38 p.m. Loft 3B, Derek. Window view, observed physical contact. Kissing, no evidence of work materials. Takeout. Thai food. Timestamped 5:47 p.m. Text received. 9:46. Dinner ran long. Return. 10:08. Same outfit, claim shower due to food smell. I closed the note. Saved it. Backed it up twice. Then I sat there in the quiet, listening to the shower running upstairs. And for the first time, I didn't feel confused anymore. I felt ready. After that night, everything changed. Not between us, at least not outwardly. Emily still moved through the house like nothing was wrong. She still left sticky notes on the fridge reminding me to grab oat milk or take the trash out on Tuesdays. She still hummed while brushing her teeth. Still tapped her mug 3 times on the counter before taking a sip. Something she's done since college, a kind of nervous ritual I used to find endearing. But for me, something had shifted. I stopped looking for signs. I started collecting them. I set up a second laptop, an old one I'd kept from my consulting days. Reformatted it. No sync to iCloud, no connection to our shared networks. Password. Encrypted. Backed up twice weekly to an external drive, hidden in the attic behind insulation foam in a marked box labeled winter coats. That laptop became the archive. The first thing I uploaded was the photo of her and Derek through the window. It wasn't grainy. My phone's camera caught them clearly enough to distinguish expressions. Her smile. The angle of her body. The distance between their knees. I timestamped it, cataloged it, and added the Thai takeout receipt from the trash for context. A timeline began to form, slowly, steadily. I didn't just save images. I logged events. Every night she worked late. I noted it. If she claimed a dinner with clients, I logged the location she mentioned, then cross-checked it with the tracker. If the tracker pinged near Derek's loft or any other recurring place, I marked it in red. If it matched her words, I marked it in gray. There weren't many gray marks. The earbuds tracker stayed in place. I charged the case weekly when she wasn't looking, carefully maintaining battery life. I never relied on it for full surveillance, just confirmation. Spot checks. Anchors. Enough to verify whether her words matched her movements. Meanwhile, the router logs built their own case. Our smart router keeps activity logs for every connected device. I exported them monthly, converted to CSV, then filtered by her device ID. The pattern became clear. On multiple weekends when she was allegedly out of town, her devices were still connecting. Late at night, early in the morning. Sometimes only for 20 minutes. Sometimes for hours. I started screen recording her account logins on our shared PC. Not because I wanted to see what she was doing, half the time the browser history was wiped anyway, but because I wanted to catch slips, folder names, file paths. Once, I watched her open a folder titled Private Events and drag an image into an encrypted zip file. The file name was 3B_itinerary, PDF. I wasn't able to open the zip, but I screen recorded the interaction, time and date stamped. She thought she was being careful. She wasn't being careful enough. The smart lock told its own story. Each entry, each unlock using her code was logged. I created a spreadsheet of those too. Compared it against her claimed travel schedule. Dozens of discrepancies. I matched those entries with EV telematics. Every charge location, every timestamp. One weekend, she told me she was in Spokane for a strategy retreat. Her car charged twice near Bainbridge Island and never once left the Seattle Metro. I contacted the inn she stayed at on Bainbridge. Posed as someone interested in booking the same package for my anniversary. Asked about amenities. Asked if they had couple discounts. Then asked, offhandedly, if they had any feedback from previous guests. Especially anyone named Emily W. "Oh, Emily," the concierge said brightly. She and Derek were lovely, very polite. They checked out late on Sunday. I can look up the details if you need. I thanked her and ended the call. I didn't need more. Still, I wanted receipts. I went through loyalty programs, hotel chains, rideshare accounts, even our grocery store. Anything with points. Anything that might reveal co-travelers or joint bookings. One chain listed a reservation under her name but showed a secondary guest. Derek W. Same last name as the check-in on her digital key. Shared email thread. Thank you for your stay. CC'd to both. I **Ted everything. Archived it. Labeled it. I wasn't building a trap. I was constructing a record. A complete, indisputable map of what had happened and when. Not for drama. Not for confrontation. For clarity. For court if it came to that. The more I gathered, the more deliberate she seemed. As though she had convinced herself she could craft a story airtight enough to overwrite reality. That if she played the wife well enough at home, the other life didn't count. That duplicity, if done gracefully, wasn't betrayal, it was survival. And maybe she was surviving something. But so was I. I traced 2 Uber trips billed to her corporate card. Both initiated from Derek's building. Both ended at the Alder and Pine Hotel, the one from the envelope. One at 6:14 p.m. on a Thursday. One at 7:53 a.m. the following Monday. Different days, same destination. I checked the company's billing policy. Lodging reimbursements require itemized receipts. I requested one, for accounting compliance, from the front desk. Told them my firm was reviewing their contract. The PDF came within the hour. Room 521. 2 guests. Same dates as the team building offsite. I saved it. Later that night, she left her iPad unlocked on the dining table. I took one photo. Just one. An open message to Derek. Not dirty. Not romantic. But real. Next time let's get the room with the tub. Still thinking about the way you looked at me after. No greeting. No emojis. No sign-off. Just routine. Like this was already chapter 6 in a long, quiet book. I didn't forward the message. Didn't **T it to her cloud. I just documented it. Backed it up. Labeled the file iPad_message_tub. Added to the timeline. It was strange. How calm I felt doing all of this. Mechanical, yes. Detached, maybe. But not angry. The more proof I had, the less rage I carried. There was no need to scream when I could cite timestamps. No need to accuse when I could narrate, day by day, the exact pattern of what happened. The more evidence I logged, the more peaceful I felt. Because now, if she ever gaslit me, if she ever tried to nice her tears or flip the story, I wouldn't have to defend myself. I'd just pull up the archive. Let the truth do the talking. She'd chosen this. All I was doing was making sure history remembered it accurately. I'd known about the clause for years. It was one of those things you put into a prenuptial agreement and then pretend doesn't exist. At the time, it had felt theoretical, almost absurd, like locking the windows in a house made of stone. Emily had insisted on the prenup back then, not me. She wanted to keep her agency stock separate, just in case. We were both practical people. We sat down with a lawyer, had the hard conversations early, and signed the paperwork like two people mapping out a future they fully believed in. But tucked inside that document, page 7, paragraph 4, was a fidelity clause. Simple language. No drama. Just this. In the event of a confirmed extramarital relationship by either party, said party forfeits claim to any jointly acquired equity, including primary residence and business interests accrued during the marriage. No fault state or not, a prenup is a contract, and contracts hold. My first call was to the same lawyer who drafted it. Still in practice. Still sharp. I need a review, I said. And I need discretion. We met in a private office downtown. No secretary. No paper trail. I brought the drive, encrypted with a curated folder of evidence. Dates, screensh *TS, receipts, the full timeline in read-only format. I'd removed anything emotional. No commentary. No venting. Just fact after fact, lined up with clinical precision. He scrolled for a full 10 minutes before looking up. This is more than sufficient, he said. If anything, it's surgical. I nodded. You understand the implications? He asked. I do. And you're sure you want to proceed quietly? Yes. He leaned back, steepled his fingers. Then here's what we do. The plan wasn't revenge. It wasn't emotional. It was structural. First, finances. I rerouted my paycheck into a personal checking account. One she had never touched, opened years ago and left dormant. It now became my primary account. I left just enough in the joint account to avoid suspicion, enough for groceries, auto payments, and wine on Fridays. Second, I froze the secondary credit card under my name that she used for travel expenses. Not abruptly. I reported it lost. A reissue was triggered, and the card was suspended. I told her casually a week later that I'd canceled it by accident. She nodded, distracted, said she'd use her corporate card for now. Perfect. Third, I moved our home into a revocable living trust under my name. Not a sale, not a transfer, just a new legal container. As long as the prenup held, the property was mine. My lawyer helped structure it so that any disputes would be subject to arbitration, not litigation. Cleaner, quieter. Fourth, I updated beneficiaries. Health directive, power of attorney, all restructured, not vindicatively, just prepared. Fifth, our shared cloud storage. I duplicated all photos, documents, and shared archives into a separate drive. Not to erase anything, just to ensure a clean digital separation. I downloaded her entire iCloud drive, legally accessible since we had shared storage and mutual passwords, and stored the last 3 years offline. Just in case she decided to change access after things surfaced. She didn't notice. Too busy. Too trusting in the shell of the marriage. Or too distracted. Finally, there was the matter of her employer. Emily's agency wasn't a small shop anymore. It had investors now. A board. Ethics guidelines. And a professional conduct clause embedded into their employee agreement, especially for senior team members involved in procurement, partnerships, and hospitality budgets. I'd seen it, and Derek was technically her subordinate. Different division, same company umbrella. Different titles, same expense platform. I wasn't going to report her for cheating. That wasn't the point. But I could report expense discrepancies. So I drafted a notice. No emotion. No narrative. Just an anonymous, time-stamped memo with attachments. Hotel receipt. Alder and Pine. Uber logs. Pickup/drop-off from non-client residential addresses. Corporate card expense note. Client dinner JW with receipt showing DW as guest. Shared loyalty receipt from Bainbridge Hotel. Timestamped route maps inconsistent with claimed client meetings. At the top, I wrote, compliance concern. Discrepancy in Q3 hospitality expenses. Request for review. I sent it through their anonymous ethics portal, standard practice for firms over a certain size. No names, no contact info, just the facts. If it triggered an internal audit, it would be slow, quiet, and systemic. Her company would follow procedure. Badge logs, expense reports, cross-referenced meetings, guest records. No scandal, just policy. And I wouldn't have to lift a finger beyond that. At home, I stayed quiet, polite, predictable. We made dinner together twice that week. She told me she was really proud of a pitch her team had just won. She laughed at a podcast over breakfast, sent me a photo of the neighbor's cat asleep on our porch. I mirrored it all. No suspicion, no drama. Meanwhile, I printed inventory sheets of every major item in the house: art, jewelry, furniture, appliances. Photographed them, dated each one, filed it in the trust folder, complete with receipts where applicable. She didn't notice the difference, because the difference wasn't on the surface. It was in the structure. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. She thought she had rewritten the rules, that I was too passive, too trusting, that she could lead two lives and control the fallout. She didn't understand yet. I wasn't going to burn her world down. I was just going to remove myself from it, cleanly, legally, with every asset locked tight behind walls she couldn't scale. And when the moment came, it wouldn't be about emotion. It would be about sequence. Sequence is everything. And I had it all. At the summer marina picnic, word had already spread. The ethics review was underway. Badge logs didn't match expense reports. Anonymous packets circulated with redacted receipts. Derek was suspended. Emily's charm dissolved under side glances and sudden silence. What began as whispers became structure, data, dates, violations. In one day, her image collapsed. No confrontation, just consequences. Emily came home to changed codes and a single envelope. Notice of separation, citing the prenup clause. Her access revoked, accounts secured, every item photographed and inventoried. No yelling, no tears, just the weight of truth, delivered with precision. She stood in the hallway, stunned. I didn't watch her leave. I just turned the page. Peace, not revenge, was all I wanted. And I had it.